Greetings once more! Welcome to Dracovin Empire! Are you ready to dive back into the Sixth World? Yes, we're heading back into Shadowrun today to talk about another country. We're going to be visiting Korea this time, which is a very interesting place, a lot of interesting history, very different than our own ones. So, if you're ready to head back to Asia, learn all about Korea today, shake my hand. I can activate a portal through time, space, the equilibrium of everything to take us to the Sixth World. I am your host and guide, Dracovin. Please leave me a tip, like and subscribe, ring the bell. And of course, let me know your experience or thoughts on all this in the comments. Alright, Korea waits. My hands outstretched. Let's go. We arrived at the Sixth World! Are you ready to learn about some interesting things? Talk about some interesting people. Well, honestly speaking, I got to throw out my sources. I love to talk about that just because I'm very much more on a, yes, I talk about this. Sometimes, you book in front of you. Learn all you want. Book in front of you always helps. And in this case, there's really only one main book here for Korea, Shadows of Asia. Unfortunately, we don't have a newer book for it at this point. I do like Shadows of Asia, but I definitely feel like, something outside of 3rd edition would have been good. And there are some information post Shadows of Asia, but this is really going to be your main source book at this time. There really isn't a lot of extra stuff after that. Korea. It's a meta-friendly nation. It's on the Korean Peninsula. It's between Japan and China. Left of China and, Japan. In a lot of ways, it is in between the two of these things. It's technically a parliamentary republic, but it also has a military presence. We'll talk about it. Its capital is Seoul. The current leader, as of 3rd edition, was President General Kang Ho-lee. There is about 98 million people, of which about half are human. The rest are elf, orc, basically being each 15%, about 8% dwarf, 5% troll, and 4% other. About 12% are sinless, only about 20% are below poverty, and about 61% are corporate. There's a lot of Korean ethnicity there, with some Japanese and some other. The Japanese will explain there too. So there is actually, a good percentage of both English and Japanese spoken as major languages, other than most people who speak Korean. And basically, there are still major religions in here. Other than Christianity and Buddhism, shamanists have actually gained a lot of power, for good reason. Let's talk about the history in this alternate world. Well, what happened? Well, big things happened because of, again, the rise of Imperial Japan. If you go back to any of the videos I've talked about Asia and the history of that in my Japan video even too, you'll know that the rise of Imperial Japan had a huge effect, something that doesn't happen in our timeline, but happened in this one for a number of reasons, different things that happened. And because of that influence, it led to the unification of both sides in North Korea. Basically, in 2005, in this alternate timeline, President Rey of South Korea was murdered, basically by North Korean communist dissident. Though there is some thought that the assassin was Japanese trained, hint, hint, wink, wink. And basically at this point in time, Japan's support General Yuan, head of the army, who seized control and invaded North Korea. The following year, North Korea tried to use their nuclear missile strikes against Japan. All the missiles failed to detonate. And by the end of the year, Korea was unified. And Japan sent Imperial troops to guard the North Korean nuclear sites. So you can see, again, go check out my Japan video about the rise in this alternate world of Imperial Japan. This is one of the main elements. It does unify Korea, but it's really creating a semi-puppet state in a lot of ways. So yeah, the Second Korean War in 2005, the nuclear strikes, all ridiculous. Other major events that happened in the timeline was Koshon Industries was formed by the merger of privatized North Korean companies in 2007. The first spirit village in Jeju Island in 2011. President General Yoon dies in 2023. Admiral Park is selected as by the military as president. We have the East Tide Corporation forming in 2030. In 24, BTL abuse becomes an epidemic in a lot of places. 2055, we have the Unification Church and insect spirits. The loonies being banned because, hey, they try to get insect spirits in. It's a bad thing. 2059, Pacific Prosperity Group is formed. with Samyang and Koshim as the founding members. In 2060, President General Huang retires following financial scandal, and General Kang Ho Lee becomes president, who is, as we know about the current. In 2064, Koshim Industries files for bankruptcy. Protection is bailed out by the government. So that industry that formed by the North Korean companies basically went bankrupt in 2064. So we did have like a 15, 20-year period. We don't know a lot about it. Again, this is from 3rd edition to 6th edition. We don't know about major updates that have happened here in Korea, unfortunately, past this time period. This is really where we know best. It's one of those things that's, we don't have the timeline. Yeah. Talk about the country. In this case, when we talk about Korea, it's, again, right there in the middle, hey, next to Manchuria, one of the successor countries of China, in the 6th War. And its terrain is its terrain, its land is its land. It adapted to the awakening of magic and a lot very well. So not a lot of major events or catastrophic things happened in the country to really stand out. It didn't have any major, huge damage other than what happened to everybody. The various plagues, various collapses of things like the crashes. All these things happen to them too. They just aren't really standing out as anything particularly worse than any other nation. They're a developed enough nation to survive this. Okay, now that we've established that, if you're going to go visit Korea, in Sin, great, you get a tourist visa. Very easy. The other ways, you can enter through the Manchurian border, the small islands along the coast, as long as you avoid patrols, you can get in the country. Major places to check out are, of course, the Seoul, Incheon, Metaplex. If I butcher any names, I'm just bad at pronouncing everything in real life, so I apologize to anybody that, if you want to say my Korean pronunciation, or my pronunciation of any of these things, is terrible. Sorry. So it's the capital. It's a sprawling megaplex of 30 million cabins. This Seoul Incheon megaplex, features a huge number of attractions. NIS headquarters, the fashionable Myeongdong district, the port of Incheon. Incheon is where the Vice is. Corporate suites relaxing at exclusive nightclubs, thrill-seeking rich teenagers, etc. It's cosmopolitan. It's a good portion of foreign runners live in Seoul. So basically, if you're a foreign runner and you want to work in Korea, go to Seoul. That's where you're going. Incheon concentrates maritime aerial activity through its harbor international airports, not to mention a good deal of manufacturing that's conveniently close to it. If you're thinking of sabotaging a factory or stealing a prototype, you'll end up there. It's also the center of war between the Park Syndicate and the Yashimita Gumi. And so, yeah, a lot of people die from that. Basically, the local gangsters and the international gangsters wore it out a lot in the region there. Pyongyang, the former North Korean stronghold, capital, is now a Japanese stronghold. Basically, in the post-war reconstruction, the government basically, the Korean government, it was expensive to do this, basically. So they loosened regulations, let Japanese corps. They pumped a lot of money into the North's economy, but the locals didn't get a lot of it. It's basically, could be considered as dirty as Seoul is glitzy. The Seoul's glitzy. The Kafama capitalist communist capital is an industrial nightmare. Contaminated, impoverished, local and foreign corps taking advantage of cheap workforce, corrupt authorities. Yeah. So, famous for being the headquarters of the ancient Korean Navy, is a nexus of maritime trade and fishing industry and maritime research. It's an eco-terrorist target to a head. Shipbuilding is big, corps like Hyundai, Wuxing, Shiwase, Yamatsu, and Masterix constantly trying to ruin each other's profits. The major tourist attraction is Chiyodo Island. Basically, this is a place where the weather is fantastic, the economy is great, and spirits live side by side with mortals. There are thousands of spirits roaming the island since the awakening. Some pretend to be normal people. You can even get, like, if you want to, photo ops with a local spirit and sign. It's an interesting place. It's also a bastion of the shamanism that came back in Korea in full force. You know, the nature of a lot of their ancient beliefs and stuff like that, which gained a lot of traction, you know, with the awakening. And so folks believing in the musk as a way of surviving attempt to appease spirits, to avoid drawing their wrath and making their offerings to solve problems. Which is an altar, sometimes several, where the Sunbang, the shaman, performs their Hangsin, altar god ceremonies. The island is brimming with Telsima, especially near Mount Halissa and the crater, but it's not, Talus legend isn't popular here. There's a huge mountain spirit called the Sun that sided with locals after Misuhama's Pinnacle distribution, MCT, started pushing them. So basically, if you want to deal with stuff in that area, you know, you have to manage to appease the locals and the spirits that are there, and there are some powerful spirits there. Another major location that has a lot of spiritual connection is Mount Haktusa. Again, sorry if I'm butchering any names here. It's about, Korea's a mountainous area, about 2/3. And this one stands out. It's on the border of Manchuria and the Yalu and Tumen rivers. It's a dead volcano with a huge crater called Cheonji, the celestial lake, on top of it. It's symbols for Koreans. It's where the first Korean kingdom was 5,000 years before. It's a paradise for shamans and Taoist leggers alike. And until Halley's Comet turned the whole thing into a trap with hostile spirits and shapeshifters roaming the mountains. So, again, 3rd edition, big storyline, had effect there. How that's affected the last 20 years, has things stabilized? Unfortunately, we don't know. Hard to say. Yep. Alright, now that we know about a few of the cities, a few of the people, let's talk about government, who's in charge. No, let's talk about the people first. Let's talk about the people first. That's probably, then we'll talk about the government. That's probably that. So, people. Alright. Koreans are very open people. There were some early xenophobic outbreaks in light of some folklore stories, but the awakening was kind of benign in Korea and accepted by the general population. It's been a progressive stance that a lot of metas from countries like Japan, hey, remember, are coming there, and so Korea, for the first time in history, gained a large foreign minority. Basically, you know, the xenophobia of Japan not being nice to their metas, a lot of them get into Korea. On top of this, we have the technophilia plus traditions that is interestingly mixed, because there is a huge technophilia in Korea. Nature is omnipresent. It's part of the everyday life. Everything from groceries to religion. Gaming is huge. Korea is the gaming capital of the world. They took over from Japan. If you want to be a trios tribe, crushing Japanese competitors, it's a big thing here. Business is big. This attitude goes to a lot of other parts of society. Soda augments are standard among many people. Sports visible or cosmetic wear, especially that makes them look a lot more like their idols. So overall, usage is huge there. But on the other side, we have tradition. Traditional values, respecting elders, is the basis of a lot of their cultures. This actually does respect to shadowrunning, too. Older runners are treated with a lot of respect and get better jobs, even if they're new to the scene or their performance is subpar. So, you know, even if you're an older person getting into running for the first time, you'll get some respect even there, too. And then you've got the spirits of it, the awakening of everything, where Mudangs, the spiritual advisors that were for the common and not so common folk, have regained their powers, basically, in this world now, too. And there's a lot of people, from executives to others, that will have consultings with their preferred Mudang for people in important places. There are Mudangs that sometimes will do things like end up at mistresses for the rich and powerful, you Mistress is just the female version. I do not know the male version off the top of my head. But anyway, these are very influential people that have very powerful contacts. They call upon the gods, ancestors, natures in the form of spirits. Hey, that they use through dance, music, storytelling, and chants. They possess their body. They communicate with mortals. The shamanism has fortune-telling, charms, geomancy. So this is very important to a lot of the culture here. And of course, checking in with these people who have real powers and real influence then means it's very important for us. On the other hand, there's also the issue of smaller cults. Remember, we talked about the Moonies, the nickname for the Unification Church. Well, they weren't the only one. They went away with their bug spirits, but you have groups such as the Virtual Utopians, a matrix gang that believe the net is the be-all end-all to meta humanity and preach it, and other various groups that you can find throughout the area. We'll talk about the corporate side of it. That's a mess also. And of course, the fringes of society that exist too. The dangers there. Alright, now, let's talk about who's in charge. Okay, well, President General Kang Ho Lee. Perfect person in the line of military dictators. The fifth one after Yoon's coup. They're the Prime Minister, there's a National Assembly, but in the grand scheme of things, it's the President who's in charge. All those other people make convenient scapegoats in the meetings and basically, it's a mess there. And the government has had trouble. Social unrest eroding the power basis of the president, trying to distract with national hardliners, basically by adopting a more aggressive stance against Japan. The heavy influence of Japan has been a big thing in influencing a lot of the major players in charge here. Japan basically never really conquered Korea, but basically has been kind of Big Brother looking out, in charge, suggesting things. Next pop. And yeah, kind of embracing nationalism in a lot of ways, pointing out a lot of bad things that Japan's done. That leads to their own downfall eventually in the 20 years post Third Edition, in a lot of ways. Yeah, there is some nationalism here too. So, and there's another thing where I would love to see what's happening in the later editions here. But this tough guy things, he's going to have volume, but he's not going to do anything outright. Because he's got supporters at home, they want some peace too, the president, and supporters in Japan. So, yeah. The national security apparatus is strong. You've got to remember. Intelligence Service keeps a tab on everyone, and basically allows Lee to step ahead of his rivals. Part of the military station near the Manchurian border, but most assets are concentrated in Kusang and Nusa. So keep that in mind. And there are some isolated interests. Now, President Lee and his cronies, fortunately for them, moderate operation parties haven't been able to organize a political bloc yet. Because if they would, this would be meaning that their control would be eroded even more, and things would return back to a more less dictatorial situation. But, unfortunately for them, they've got the extremists on both the right and the left. Oh, yeah. Post the monarchy falling of 1910, the upstate aristocrats were diehards. Su Hyun-shin is a powerful Dang shaman and direct descendant of the last dynasty of the monarchy of Korea. They have an arch-conservative platform, the Celestial Path Party, which is a powerful force. Strong Koreans who are sick of basically Japanese pop culture. They're Korean power first. And very interestingly, arch-conservative oftentimes is a term that is used for very non-meta-friendly groups. But the thing is, Korea is a very meta-friendly place. And when you're talking about nationalism and return to tradition, it basically doesn't matter to this arch-conservative party. Whether you have horns, pointy ears, fangs, if you are Korean and you dislike Japan, you're welcome to the Celestial Path Party. It's all about the traditionalism of it, rather than, well, honestly, racism. With other things like the student movement, the March of 1999 Poli Club, which was a thorn in government's back, was made into, it was basically an independence movement. Get rid of the fascists from the regime, get rid of the, President Lee and his group. They were outlawed as terrorists. They're still around, haven't gotten rid of them. Then, of course, you've also got, hey, North Korea was taken. The Korean Communist Party became outlawed, but it survived. There are a few, again, most communists traded their ideology for the capitalist prosperity of the South. But there are some hardcore Reds that are keeping the glorious People Revolution going. Basically, yeah. So, certainly speaking, they would like to oust them too, but they're not going completely. So you have these various, extremist groups, which are a thorn inside of the thing, and then it's causing problems. But, the party that really could stop them hasn't started, but they're being probably distracted by these problems going on the outside, so, never know. Maybe one of them erodes stuff enough to allow an opening. Maybe. Let's talk about the other two main factors that are big in Korea and most places. The corporates and the economy, and its dark side, crime. Because these two things, megacorps and criminals. On the corporate side of things, Korea's economic powerhouse. There's a lot of wealth. And foreign megas and local places are big. It is a hotspot of the basically conflict between the Pacific Prosperity Group, the Japan Corps, and a lot of other groups. So, yeah, it is a big thing between a lot of corporations, and many corporations, whether they are from Japan, Asia, or from the rest of the world, have a hand somewhere in Korea. It is a huge thing. You can see from Ares, Eastern Tide Corporation, Federated Boeing, Hyundai, Kaohsiung Industries, Maersk Incorporated Assets, Musama Computer Technology, Renraku, which is in Seoul, Samyang, Sangwon, Shiwase, Sony, Watson, Yamatsu, Yansu, and Novatech. All of them have a hand in Korea somewhere. It is heavily influenced. You cannot get it. And so, yeah, Japan Corps, North American Corps, European Corps, all of them just getting a hand into the economic pie that is the wealth that is being created here corporately and otherwise. It does mean no one basically takes control. That's good. And it does mean because they are competing heavily, basically, again, it's corps aren't in control. Anyway, how about the crime side of things? Well, there are a number of groups that you can talk about that are important in this entire area. The Skopla Rings, which is a Korean-based crime syndicate that has a Korean organized crime syndicate that has a lot more influence outside of Korea. Interestingly, they are in there, but they have light there. Basically, the Jopak semi-unified gangs of there are the biggest ones, where the Wosen Pirates and the Park Syndicate are the two big ones. And both of them clashing with the Yamatsugumi, who are our good old Yakuza syndicate that is based in Korea. So the Yakuza messing with these two major gangs, and this basically big ring that, yeah, they have their foot there, but they're like, we'll let the locals do their thing. We've moved on to other places in the world in a lot of ways. So, yeah. Wonsong Pirates have, of course, their rule of Wonsong and Death Grip of maritime activities. They're not called pirates for no reason. Can't get away from that. And, of course, the Jopaks and the Yakuza. They succeed in breaking the Yashinagumi's previous rule of Korea's shadows. Again, they haven't defeated the Yakuza, but basically they broke them in a lot of ways. So those two are at a heavy war here. So it's very interesting to see that we have this massive goings-on in the criminal underworld. And yeah, certainly speaking, Wosan pirates are there. They control their region, and Hiroshima Gumi probably would want to go after them at some point in time to control those areas, but they just haven't. Now, we can talk about Shadowruns a little bit. There's kind of interesting information, too, about it. Because, in fact, more than the higher majority of Shadowrunners in Korea are actually women. It's very interesting that the percentage seems to be leaning in that thing. If you do have men there, they're riggers, street samurais, deckers. So there is this kind of again, women going into a lot of more spiritual aspect, magic-based roles a lot in general. Not always. Again, not always, but there are interesting statistics in them. And there's a Shadowland known in Seoul. And it is actually one of the best places for nature-related Shadowrunning in 2064. Oh, and one last thing to note here. The Eastern Drowning, Mang, is thought to lair somewhere in Korea. Where exactly Mang is, lairing? Not sure. Somewhere, probably in those mountains. But, there you go. Korea. I liked kind of diving into Korea and talking, learning about it. It's a very interesting place because, again, we can see how the history of this part of the world has shifted dramatically by a lot of things that are going on. We can see that, there's this huge evolution in North America, but happened in Asia too. This is after our time. It's an alternate world. The Second Korean War that was hosted about by Imperial Japanese influence when they went imperial again. And it's caused big effects in Korea. And yes, there are still issues in Korea. The North is definitely not treated as well as the South. They're kind of ignored in a lot of ways, left to the corporate influence. The South has their, excess. They're diving into things like BTLs and too much on addiction to Matrix and a lot of problems that are happening there. And the society itself is suffering in a lot of ways. But deeping into their own technophile side and their traditionalist side and somehow melding them along with this open-ended nature being accepting to any metatypes. And you can see that in even their most extremist policies. It's not xenophobia, it's, you are going to be part of our culture, here, which is the culture for all of us. It's just such this interesting mix of forces that make their nation so unique and interesting. And one that's a very unique part of the Sixth World. I enjoyed diving into it. I hope you do too. And I would hope at some point in time maybe we get a new Shadows of Asia book or something like the Sixth World Almanac that talks about more things. I don't know if, people doing Sixth Edition would do anything like that, but I would love to visit a lot more of these places in the world. Even, some that we've heard about, and this one where we've heard some things about it. A lot of shit's happened. What has that meant for Korea? I'm curious. I will leave things there. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to check out all my other stuff, whether that's over on the YouTube side of things or on the Twitch side of things. Whichever you join me on, fine by me. But if you're on the YouTube side, hey, do the appeasement over there, talk about the beginning, and subscribe to the bell. Let me know what you think about all this. What's your thoughts on this? Have you done runs in Korea? Would you be interested in doing it in your Shadowrun game? Music. There's a lot of interesting opportunities. Certainly. Check out my social medias, updates on schedule, when I'm either live on Twitch recording stuff, doing things like All Bad and Swell, my live play the TTRPG 8, discussing tabletop, Saturdays at 6. That's my talk show, kind of news of the week, kind of interesting topics in the tabletop world show. So check out all that stuff. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you for joining me today. Until the next time we dive back into the Sixth World, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.